Dr. Hiram Ting. I think it's a very unique name. I've never heard of the name Hiram. Yeah. But anyway, Hiram is the director of Responsible Borneo. Very easy to remember. Reborn. Yeah, Reborn. And chairman of Sarawak Research Society. He's attached to ICATS, CATS University, College Sarawak in Malaysia as a professor. He is also affiliated to several university abroad with different capacities, yeah, in Wakayama University in Japan, as well as in Polytechnic University of the Philippines, and many others, yeah, I think, which I'm not mentioning here. He serves as the editor-in-chief of Young Consumers, Journal of Applied Structural Equation Modeling, JASEM, Responsible Tourism Management, JRTM, and Asian Journal of Business Research, AJBR. His papers are published in some of the many reputable journals, including European Journal of Marketing, Tourism Management, International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management, Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services, and Internet Research, which is trending now, Internet Research. Yeah? He has guest edited more than 20 special issues on topics relating to marketing, consumer behavior, tourism, and hospitality. Due to his passion for youth and community, as well as responsible tourism, yeah, responsible meaning sustainable tourism, um, he founded Southeast Asia Research Academy, Sierra, and International Center for Responsible Tourism in Southeast Asia, ICRTC. So we can see that Prof. Hiram is a founder. So if you're lost, please be found today. Yeah, yeah. He is the first ambassador of Emerald Publishing in East Asia and the first Malaysian to be included in the United Nations Tourism, formerly known as UNWTO, yeah, Panel of Tourism Expert. So you know he really knows his stuff, and he's been involved in many academic related as well as community related projects. Yeah. Later he will give you his details for you to contact him. Yeah. So without further ado, I would like to invite Prof. Hiram to share with us all his experiences, and at the same time invite you to write good questions, yeah, because this is your chance, yeah. You have the person, the host himself here, yeah, to answer all your questions regarding publication and research, yeah. So Prof. Hiram, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Cordelia. Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon to all of you. I only have 90 minutes because I'm too used to talking and speaking. So I have to make sure there is ample time towards the end for Q&A. Now, first and foremost, when you look at editor's talk, you might think that I'm an expert in writing and publishing. So it's good to say upfront that I'm not an expert in writing and publishing because my papers still get rejected. But it is a learning process, and it's good to share with you some of my experiences along the way. And don't be surprised, or you might not be surprised, a lot of these experiences um, originated from failures and mistakes. So I'm just like any human being, and mistakes, failures are bound to happen. Yet it all depends on how you pick up yourself in the process, how you persist, how you learn, unlearn, relearn in the process. I know we have all heard these terms before, easier said than done. But hopefully you can identify yourselves to some of my experiences. I often tell my students, participants in previous workshops, for 90 minutes we can't really learn how to write because writing is something subjective. You can always go to YouTube, find a useful video, and watch that video spoken by someone in the United States, in UK, in Australia. What I like to do, in this session, um, by sharing some experiences like any researcher uh, who aspires to learn, to do well, you can identify yourselves to my experiences, and towards the end, you leave this place a little more motivated, a little more inspired. Writing and publishing will always remain challenging. Writing and publishing is never meant to be easy. Yet, this process can be extremely rewarding. This process can be extremely satisfying. You always find extra reasons why you want to persist. Even though your paper is rejected, it's okay to be sad, upset for 1 hour, 3 hours, 1 day, 2 days, but you know how to recover, and you learn from your mistakes. And in many, many cases, failures and mistakes become more useful teachers. Um, Sometimes I look at my juniors, I look at some young lecturers, um, when they do everything too smoothly, nothing wrong, but I caution them that you choose your topic, it is the right topic. You choose your method, it is the right method. You choose your software, it is the right software. You do your analysis, everything goes so well. You write, you submit, you finish, minor, you graduate. Very smooth. The concern is you are only exposed to one theory, one method, one software. Everything is correct. And when you begin to teach, no insinuation on all the lecturers, all the working stuff. When you start working, you stop learning. And what you learned 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you still teach because you didn't really update yourself with all the current advancement in research, in methods. But if you fail, if you make mistakes, even though it might cost you 1 day, 1 week, more sleepless nights, in hindsight, those failures and mistakes are so precious. Example, I learned a software called Amos. I learned a software called NVivo. After a while, I realized these are not the right software for my work. On one hand, I wasted some time. On the other hand, it is still a good learning process because when I read papers using this software, I'm able to understand what this paper it is about. Or at least when I listen to some presentation, I'm able to understand what it is about. So, most of the things I share with you today, no shame to admit that they are mostly from my failures. But if you trust the process, a learning process, a learning, relearning process, I often tell my students, my colleagues, at the end of the day, not only you achieve your goal, you will get more than what you bargained for. Example, writing, publishing. Many people may think publication is the end goal. Your paper gets published. What about getting downloaded? What about getting cited? What about getting read? What about making an impact, not only in academia, but also in the industry? Publication is a wonderful milestone. Your paper gets published, but it's not the end of the whole learning process. It's not the end of the whole learning process. And if you see publishing as a process, not only I believe your paper will get published one day, that process allows you to learn a lot. Writing and publishing can potentially build your profile in such a way you become a valuable, resourceful person. Even to my undergraduate students, sometimes I told them, you don't have to wait until you graduate. learn how to innovate. I mean, same goes to master's, PhD students as well as lecturers. Learn how to innovate your writing and publishing, because it's not only for publication, which is important for KPI, for graduation, for promotion. It can do more than that. And this is something which I will share with you later. Again, no promise about, happy ever after, continuous success. Challenges, failures will still happen. Like I said earlier, hopefully this session gives you extra reasons, extra gear why you should persist, why you should still move on unless you have, Maslow hierarchies of need. You find another reason, another purpose in your life, then you can move away from academia and and do something else. Okay, so if you have any questions, you like what Prof. Cordelia mentioned earlier, let me know later. If it is really urgent, you can just stop me and ask, because if it is a useful question, perhaps it's also useful for me to address immediately. Okay, this is one quote I like. Try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. So if I equate publication to success, then I would say publishing is value. Yes, we want to succeed. We see success as a goal, but don't overlook the process that it takes to reach that goal, because that process creates values. You can co-create values in the process. Again, you will see what I meant later. Oops, over there. We heard about customer is always right. What about the editor is always right? Like him, hate him, agree, disagree. There's simply no point to argue if your paper is rejected. If authors are busy, you must also remember editors are also busy. Yes, you can complain, editor rejects your paper and he or she provides template response. You ask for specific response and you may not get any reply. The editor is almost always right. The editor is always right, even when she isn't. Now, I want you to look at that sentence. My editor may be raising points I don't agree with. She may be getting certain things wrong. But on the flip side, it means I did not make the right message powerful enough. Have you ever thought of this? All this while, I receive comments which many of these comments I disagree. There's no point to complain. Of course, if it is serious, you can raise this issue to the editor-in-chief. But usually editor doesn't want to upset good reviewers. Okay, so you need to know some inconvenience truth behind the scene. But if you look at this situation from a learning perspective, it simply means your writing is not clear enough. Editor or reviewer does not see the value, it does not make sense to them, and therefore they suggest something that you should do. You may disagree, but if you disagree, can you respond why you disagree and you provide justification? I did that as well. Of course, I did not write, your comment is utterly rubbish. You said in a polite way, while reviewer, editor has a point in whatever, the co-authors and I decide to maintain whatever it is because we provide justification. Okay, so scholarly discussion. Instead of complaining what they get wrong, why not, look at our own work? Can we do better to improve clarity, to provide better justification, so see the story, our work guides their thoughts, and we build our arguments in such a way they see value, they see novelty, they see originality in our work. Many years ago, I submitted a paper to a journal, Scopus SSCI. Before long, I received reply. That's rejected. We submitted to another journal, SSCI Scopus. Before long, that's rejected. We submitted to the third journal. It went through editorial desk. However, after a few months, we received the editorial decision based on comments given by the reviewers. The paper was also rejected. Like I said, there are comments which we agreed. There were comments which we disagreed. Comments which we agreed, we learn. Comments which we disagreed, we also learn. Why? We disagreed, but these comments could be useful for future papers. It doesn't make sense to this paper, but it's useful. Perhaps I should do this next time. Perhaps I should do that next time. Now, the co-authors and I decided, why not we pick up some comments we agreed, we revised the paper, we submitted to another journal, the fourth journal, SSCI and Scopus. It went through editorial desk, it went through review. To cut the story short, eventually it was published. So if you persist, your paper will still get published, but you must make sure you do your work. And the story doesn't stop here. That fourth journal is ranked higher than Journal 1, Journal 2, and Journal 3. Okay, so I have to thank the editors of Journal 1, Journal 2, and Journal 3 for rejecting our paper. It ended up being published in a better journal, SSCI Scopus Q1. Okay, both Q1. So it's similar to customer is always right. They are not always right. But the point is you do not want to lose your customers. You listen to them. Perhaps there is a need to reflect certain things. He said something which is not correct, but it at the same time highlights certain issues we should look at. We don't want to lose our customers. Okay? The editor is always right. To edit is divine. Editing, revising, improving your writing. So once you write a paper, once it is completed, don't submit immediately. Sit on it, sleep on it for a few days, for 1 week, for 2 weeks, because you should be the best critic of your own work. You read your introduction again. You understand your storyline better this time. Should you improve your introduction? Introduction could be something we write first. It could also well be something we write the last, because you are trying to improve, edit your work so that editor, reviewers who read your work for the first time understand the first time. Okay, remember, authors are busy, editors are also busy. After reading your abstract, after reading your first paragraph, second paragraph, if we still don't understand what you are trying to tell us, then it is a bad sign. Basically, we have predetermined this paper could well be just rejected. We will be professional enough to read the whole thing, but basically, decision is already made. One simple reason, we receive more papers than what the journal can publish. For young consumers, rejection rate is 85%. 85%. Okay? So we receive more than what we can publish. Now, it may sound difficult, but the good news is, if your work is decent, there's always a chance. Some people may think, why not we submit to Q4, Scopus Q4? If your university allows Scopus, it doesn't matter what rank it is, why not Q4? Yes, by all means you can try, but sometimes it may not be as easy as you thought. Okay, in the early days of my career, I also submitted to some Q3, Q4 journals. Nothing wrong, but what may happen, what might happen is, it will take a long time to get a decision. Sometimes editor, in order to stop constant harassing, reminding from the authors, he or she would just say, no news means good news. Your paper is still pending. At least it is not rejected. Now, it might not be a good thing for you, especially if you are waiting for that paper to be accepted in order to graduate. Okay, one of these journals, like, I'm not sure about the journal's status now, but one of these journals in the past is called Kasesat Journal of Social Science from Thailand. I submitted a paper. After some time, it went through, it was sent to review. After 6 months, 7 months, I can't remember exactly now, the paper was accepted for publication. Now, if your university recognizes acceptance, then it's okay. But at that time, it's not enough for me. Because that email also mentioned it will only be assigned volume and issue, I think 2 years later. 2 years later. Okay. It happens to many journals now. And that's why many journals introduce early cite online first with DOI, even though these papers are not assigned volume and issue. So I took a risk. I wrote to the editor-in-chief. I told him or her, I believe this is a good paper, and it has potential. It has the potential to attract citation, and then I provide justification. If 2 years published, I would withdraw the paper. I took the risk. Okay, eventually the editor-in-chief compromised. Instead, after 6 months, the paper was published. Okay, I will not encourage you to do what I did, but there are so many things you can learn in the process. Many times, what I found is the paper has good story, but the writing does not do the story justice. Especially many of us, English is not our first language. I attended many conferences in Indonesia, Thailand. When they're presented, I could tell the story is very interesting. But when I look at the paper, this is just another paper to be rejected. Of course, on one hand, if we target certain journals from certain regions, they emphasize a lot more on knowledge contribution, on theoretical contribution. Scholars from certain countries are trained less in this aspect. So that could be one reason. When they look at your paper, you may wonder if they read your paper, because they glance through, they already know this is a rejection. There is no contribution to knowledge. They do not have to read the whole paper. They only need to read your introduction. It's already enough. Okay. Secondly, the writing part, the clarity, the storyline. I've seen papers, the story is common, but the way they tell story is fantastic. Okay, how many of you have read papers published in Harvard Business Review, Business Horizons, or some reputable magazines like Conversation? 1,000 words, 2,000 words. To publish there is very difficult. But if you read those papers, professors can understand, high schoolers can understand. And the story is so clear. After reading the first sentence, you want to know what is next. After reading the first paragraph, you want to know what is next, the wow factor. Many years ago, my friends and I submitted a paper to another journal. it was just rejected, but the editor was kind enough to explain. He told us, or she told us, it is actually a very good paper. It's very complete, everything. But after reading the introduction, he thinks that this paper is highly intuitive. Highly intuitive. The way you introduce, we already know what you plan to do. The way you provide your hypothesis, we already know the results. The way you show your results, we already know what conclusions to be expected. There is no wow factor, no insights, no novelty in your work. Okay, so writing, editing, if you have to work with someone, if permissible, why not? I think this is one of my slides later, but anyway, sometimes you just have to be, how should I put it? I don't know. In Chinese, we say your face skin has to be thick, muka tebal, or in BM, it's the same. I wrote an email to a scholar in Australia. Why? Because our paper, the study is something related to his expertise many years ago. And typical Malaysian or Southeast Asian, we wrote a long email to explain this paper, then only conclude why we want to invite him as a co-author. Australian, if you know, they are very blunt, okay, straight to the point. He read the email, he replied, thank you for reaching me. I think this is a good paper. However, then we know that's the end of the story, okay? Then he wish us luck, all that. After 1 year, that's why the story must continue. You should not stop there. We prepared a better paper because we learn, we improve. That paper, okay, ended up somewhere else. We prepared another paper. I wrote to this person again. This time, I wrote something short. Instead of, hi, Professor, Doctor, no, Australian, hi, just Mike or whatever. Still remember me? Okay. And this is another paper we prepared, and then what it is about. Would you like to join us as a co-author? Before my name, I include another sentence. We wish to target this journal, and that journal is rank A in ABDC. And for Australian, when it is rank A, they become, I guess, more interested, okay? He replied, oh, I remember you. Thank you for whatever. I read the paper. Then he said, I'll be happy to work with you. Then he asked, what can I do? Because this paper, the draft is already done. We don't know how busy he was, so it's better we came up with the whole paper because it's not just a one-off relationship. We hope we can build long-term relationship. So he asked, what can I do? So I told him, you only need to do two things. These two things are extremely difficult for me, but extremely easy for you. Number one, edit the story. Number two, proofread. Proofread so that I don't have to pay a proofreader anymore. For us, extremely difficult. For him, improve the story, correct the grammar, not only grammatical issue. Even if there is no grammatical issue, it's about editing, polishing, sentences, paragraphs to improve the storyline. Okay? So once it was done, we submitted, it went through review, eventually the paper was published. The year after, I went to Australia to meet him. He received me like a good friend. I was given an office at University of Technology, Sydney. So, and our relationship continues until today. Remember the first quote? Don't just aim to become a man of success, but to become a man of value. Publication is not just a goal. Publishing is the process where you can achieve a lot more than just publication at the end of the day. Okay? Anyway, I should continue. Are you still with me? Okay, this is where I come from. If you have not been to Sarawak, I promote Sarawak a bit. 1 hour, 40 minutes flight from KL to Sarawak. If you come, let me know. Okay. Have you heard of this? Publish, perish. And it seems we can perish in many, many occasions. If you don't have idea, you perish. If you have an idea but you cannot turn your idea into a researchable topic, you perish. If you have a topic you can't write, you perish. If you write, you can't publish, you perish. It all sounds gloomy, but like what I said earlier, failures, mistakes, or in this case, rejection, is part of the learning process. It's part of the learning process. So forget about the story. This Iron Lady in Pakistan. I remember many years ago when I submitted my first paper to a journal. Back then we called ISI, Index Journal. We don't call SSCI. All this came later. I submitted to the first journal, rejected. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, all rejected. Eventually, I told myself, before I lose my confidence, I submitted this paper to a peer-reviewed journal, not indexed in Thomson, Reuters, ISI, or Scopus. 2 weeks later, I received the email. Congratulations, your paper is accepted for publication. Okay? Now, this paper, I don't think it is cited by anyone, but it's important as a milestone in my journey. And that rejections allowed me to learn many things I did not realize before. At that time, Scopus, Emerald, Elsevier, I don't know what these are. Are they database? Are they publisher? I was confused. But these rejections allowed me to learn all this from zero. From zero. So, again, in retrospect, you still gain something. Not an easy process, but again, if we persist, if we see the reason why we persist, then I'm sure you will, get over it. You will succeed, but at the same time, you learn many things in the process. Now, I serve as the editor-in-chief of Young Consumers. I was appointed as the editor in 2022, but this is what I want to highlight. My journey with Young Consumer did not start gloriously. You might think that, oh, Hiram is born with this. No, I'm just like any of you. My journey with Young Consumer, 2014, I submitted a paper. 2015, I received the decision. My paper was outright desk rejected. Outright desk rejected. Okay? So it is the process where I persisted, like I said. Now, one thing that I did, I wrote to the editor-in-chief. I volunteered myself as an ad hoc reviewer. I'm not an editorial board member, but I volunteered myself as an ad hoc reviewer. If editor declined, it's okay. No harm trying. In this case, he accepted. Because as editor, we always assign a paper to multiple reviewers. You may have a title professor, but we always like consistent reviewers. Reviewers who deliver on time, in time, and they are constructive. If you deliver your review and all that you provide is not enough, read more, this is wrong, editor doesn't like this sort of comments. So they might give chance to ad hoc reviewers. Right or wrong, it's okay because editors are not always correct. And it's up to the authors how they respond, how they justify. But you do your homework. Whatever you comment, you provide literature to support. You provide suggestions what they can do. So it's a learning process. So I did this after 2015. 2 reasons. Number 1, I learned to be a reviewer. Number 2, which is more related to this, I learned to review the papers submitted to young consumer and learn how they eventually got published. Do you get the point? If this is my target journal, then I learn from the papers which are published in this journal. One way to learn is to review them. So after review several times, different papers for young consumers, I had more confidence now. If this author can do it, if that author publishes paper in young consumers, of course I can do it. Now you know you can do it. So we prepared another paper a few years later, and the paper went through review. Eventually it got published. Because of that reviewing experience, editor knows you, because like I said, they like consistent, constructive reviewers. So I wrote to them, can I be considered as an editorial board member? So before long, I was included as editorial board member. I continued, performing my work. Before long, I was appointed as associate editor. And before long, I was appointed as the editor-in-chief. 2015, 2022, 7 years, from desk rejection to editor-in-chief. What is the moral of the story? Okay, if I can do it, all of you can do it. Of course, it's not easy, but if you trust the learning, unlearning, relearning process, you will be there. Of course, when I did all this, I did not expect to become this. But things, will naturally develop, and you see more and more opportunities. Example, you attend conferences where you meet editors, or you work with authors who have publishing experience with young consumers. These are all learning processes you gain, and like I said, at the end of the day, not only your paper gets published. Yes, your paper, your publication is valuable, but that learning process is as, if not more, valuable to you in your ongoing endeavor. Okay. Another example, I'm also one of the editorial board members of one of the oldest journals in the world, British Food Journal. And the story, started the same way. I volunteered myself as an ad hoc reviewer. After reviewing the papers several times, I submitted a paper as an author, and the paper went through review. Eventually, it got published. Okay. Then I asked the editor-in-chief whether I could become an editorial board member. He told me typically it would take 1 to 2 years. They need to review your performance, then only they will decide, blah, blah, blah. I said, fine, I'm happy to go through this process. I make sure the next invitation, I accept, I do well. So 3 to 4 months later, not 2 years later, the editor-in-chief, I think he has seen enough. So he recommended me to publisher straight away to become an editorial board member. So being an editorial board member, that gave me position to propose special issue relatively easy. Okay, so I had my first special issue. This is where I guided others to publish. Why? Because when you have a special issue with a good journal, it attracts submission from different countries. Many times they would write email to you asking for your advice, how to publish in your special issue. So you met friends because of all this arrangement. Then we organized a conference there. I wrote to this person, Christopher Griffith, former editor-in-chief of British Food Journal. We used Skype because it was pre-COVID time. We did not know about Zoom or whatever. We used Skype. I asked him, would you like to come to Sarawak? we would like to invite you as a keynote speaker. He said, yes, he would like to explore this opportunity. Then I asked him, can I fly you in using economy flight, because we don't have budget. He's a full professor, okay? He's entitled to business class. Because of friendship, he said, okay. Then I asked him again, could you also conduct a pre-conference workshop so that we can attract more participants? He said, okay. Then after a while, I asked him again, could you do all this without honorarium? Because no budget. Anyway, story only. It depends on the context. He said, okay. He said, okay. But I told him, I promise you, I'll bring you to see orang utan, because you see, you also need to do some homework about the journals you want to target, the editors you like to talk to. Sounds a little cynical or evil or whatever you call it, but it's normal. You need to know how to propose value to them. I told my students, again, my colleagues, when you attend a conference, when you know there are editors, speakers there, don't just spend 5 seconds, 10 seconds to take photo and post your photo on Facebook. It's wonderful, but he or she forgets you. During that 5 to 10 seconds, say something to propose your value so that he or she would say, this sounds interesting. Perhaps later I should have lunch with you. How would you do that? You need to do some homework about them. Okay? Seriously, this is not assumption. This is something I've been teaching those juniors. How to propose your value so that they are more interested in your work instead of that 5-second, 10-second fame. He is willing to spend 30 minutes with you. And that's where you build friendship, you build collaboration. Same with this guy. So he came to Sarawak, he conducted the workshop, he spoke during the conference. I make sure I fulfill my promise. I brought him to see orang utan and all that. Oh, sorry, what happened? He's no longer the editor-in-chief because he stepped down because he is too occupied with industry consultancy work. He's also the key consultant of South Africa World Cup because of food poisoning issue and all that. So he is a real academic come practitioner, something which I will say later, because to make a real impact, on one hand, we are academics. On the other hand, we have to be informed what is happening in the real world in order to mobilize knowledge into practice. I'm not sure what is on the next slide, but let me just continue. Okay. Okay, any question, any feedback so far? Okay. So in all these stories or in my sharing, I hope you can pick up something that you can learn. I did not really show all these points in a scientific way. Point 1, you should do this. Point 2, you should do that. You don't need that. Sometimes when we show all these, students will take photo or participants will take photo as if after taking photo, you will learn. Anyways, but if you find the slide useful, you can have it. But it's more about reflecting, like I said, identifying yourselves to some of my experiences and see what you can learn from there. And if you have questions, just let me know. Okay, very quickly. I'm very poor at managing my time. Okay, 3:15. I include this slide because it's important to remind or go back to where we started, why we did research, or what research is. In research, the very essence for me is about asking questions. Asking questions. To stay curious. I put a picture of a young boy because once upon a time, when we were all very, very, very young, we were curious about so many things in the world. We were fascinated by planes, birds, dogs, cats, cars, rockets, and you ask questions your parents could not answer because you were fascinated by so many things in the world. For some reason, I'm not sure about you, but me definitely, as we grow up, as we grow older, we ask less and less and less questions. Okay? One reason could be we are afraid to make mistake. Another reason could be we are afraid to be exposed in the public. This is a silly question. You just got your PhD. You still ask this question. Ayo. Okay. I think this has to change. I'm not sure about you. For my master's students or even my undergraduate students, sometimes master students, many times I told them, next week I'm going to teach chapter 2. No, sorry. Next week we will look at chapter 2. So I want all of them to read. So next week you all teach me. If you have questions, ask me. If not, I will ask you questions. Okay, so I want them to read. I want them to come up with questions. If you are curious about things, if you exercise your inquisitive mind, you will be able to ask questions. And not only that, you will be able to ask right questions. Many times, how many times in your experience in a forum, when it comes to Q&A, typical me, no question. But actually, there are a lot of things we don't understand. It's just that we don't know what to ask. Somehow, someone asks a question. Oh, that is the exact question I like to ask. And thank God he asked, and we anticipate the answers. And when speakers answers, that answer helps everyone. How could she come up with a sharp question instantly after the speech? Okay, of course, we are not trying to analyze the situation, but I like to highlight it's important to stay curious, to exercise our critical thinking, inquisitive mind, to ask questions. And the more we do that, the more valid, useful our questions become. So sometimes students say, what topics should I do? No research topic. I told them, when you observe things around you, you can see topics everywhere. Okay, there are so many things that fascinate you. When you are observing me, you're also doing research. Before I talk, you were curious. After I spoke for 1 minute, you were still curious. You began to understand me a little, a bit more. But there are still questions. When I observe you, same thing. Why no one sit here? No complaint. Observe. Observing. I will give you some examples. Why observation may produce paper, even though it is a simple paper, but the idea, the story is interesting. It's interesting. You don't need to do a research to save the whole Malaysia. You can if you're able to do that. Okay, to address climate change. These are big issues. Anyway, I want to say this because it is something that, regardless of your position, professor, lecturer, master, PhD, all of us can do it. Same goes to ad hoc reviewer. You don't have to become a professor to do it. Even a master student can write to an editor and try your luck. Okay, you may be surprised. You receive the next email to review the paper for that journal. Okay, I would not want to go into this. I'm not sure whether Albert Einstein really said this, but Google say so lah. Okay, this is from Google. Research, yes, it is a scientific process, but it is also an artistic process. Storytelling is an art. Okay, so a lot of story, but I need to proceed. Now, this is a paper which was published in Internet Research some years ago. So allow me to spend a few minutes to explain. It's not a model paper. I'm just using it as a reference. Are you familiar with this phenomenon? When you order food, before you eat, what do? You take photo, right? You take photo first. I saw this many years ago at the restaurant. They order food. They did not eat. They did not pray. They took photo first. After that, I do that as well. They take photo, selfie with their food. The next thing they do, they post on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And what happens next? Your good friends, your whatever followers, where is this place? Why did you not invite me? It looks nice. We should go tomorrow. We should go next time or whatever. So selfie, Wi-Fi is not really an advertisement by definition. It's not a paid promotional tool. But somehow it helps to advertise, promote food and company. So I discussed this matter with my friends. Why not we do a study to compare the effect of selfie promotion and celebrity endorsement? Celebrity, someone who is famous. Me, nobody. Endorsement, because of a lot of followers. Me, no followers, but because of social media. People like, people follow. Now, if we do this, it's still not interesting enough. And that's why we add another element called decision-making process. Nothing new, right? In marketing, in communication, this is something very common. There is a model called AIDA, right? AIDA, very common. Attention, interest, desire, action. And then some papers after that, they come up with ISAS because of social media. A, attention. I, interest. S, search. A, action, buying, consuming, eating, whatever. And the last S is sharing. So we want to do a study to compare the effect of selfie promotion and celebrity endorsement on decision-making process. Now, based on theoretical explanation, if a person is aware of something, he becomes interested. Because he is interested, he will search. As he searches, he has more alternatives, he compares, eventually he makes decision, and therefore he buys, he eats, he uses, whatever. Whether he's happy or not, he will share. Does it sound logical? Logical, right? So theory provides systematic, consistent explanation of the phenomenon we want to investigate. Now, my next question is, do you think this process always happens in your experience? You must be aware first. Then only you are allowed to become interested. Then only you are allowed to search. Then only you will buy. Then only you will share. Theoretically, it sounds logical because that's the function of theory. But in your experience, do you always go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yes? No? No, right? COVID-19 taught us a lot of lessons. You saw something online, you share straight away. You did not authenticate, right? Sharing is not caring. You did not create fake news, but you spread fake news as well. That's why decision-making process can be shortened. Why? Consumers are not always rational. That's why Philip Kotler, he was an economist. Eventually, he moved to marketing. On one hand, ceteris paribus. Everything else remains constant. It's not always true in the real world. And number two, consumers are not always rational. You can read the paper, but let me just tell you one conclusion. It doesn't matter if you are a big company, you have resources to pay celebrity. Or you work in a small company, you don't have resources to pay celebrity. If you know how to capitalize, utilize social media and the phenomenon like this, it can potentially shorten consumer decision-making process, and they choose you instead of the product from a bigger company. You can be as competitive and you can still survive. Now, all these individual variables, they are all common, right? Do you agree? But when you put them together, then there is something interesting. Unless it is still not interesting to you. Anyway, I did my part. Okay, so this paper went through review. If I remember correctly, it went through review 7 times, 7 rounds of review. Okay, what may happen is, I cannot speak on behalf of the editor, but in my experience, what may happen is editors like the paper, like the story, but it's not ready for publication. So they may allow reviewers to, if reviewers demand another revision, editors may allow that. Or else, usually after 3 rounds, 4 rounds, we will make decision already. We do not like to, prolong the process. Okay. This is another paper. It's called Journal of Ethnic Foods. Are you aware of this journal? Its index is Scopus Q1. Q1. Huh? Now, I mentioned about doing homework. This is one of them. Huh? My students and I wrote a paper about Dayak food. When people visit Sarawak, and because Sarawak is part of Malaysia, they may think that Malay, Chinese, Indians are the biggest population groups. In fact, in Sarawak, it's not. It's Dayak. So I told myself, I cannot cook Dayak food. I don't own a Dayak restaurant, but at least I can write in order to promote. Again, researcher's role, how you make good use of your resources to make an impact on the real world. So I wrote this paper. I only show you 3 pages because it's enough to show you this paper is very descriptive. Pictures describing what is this food, scientific name, what are the ingredients, how they are prepared, when they are served. So you may think this is undergraduate assignment, but it is published in Q1 journal. I did homework. I looked at the references of the papers I referred to, and I came across Journal of Ethnic Foods. At that time, I was not familiar with this journal. So I went to the website and checked. Then I realized this journal is managed by an institute in Korea. And that institute is about doing research, compiling, curating works about ethnic food all over the world. Something along the line. So, since they are so ambitious, the next thing I did, the search function, I typed Dayak food. And guess what the result is? The result shows 0. So what does it tell me? If this institute aims to do research about ethnic food all over the world, yet Dayak food is not in their collection, my paper might have a chance. Simple logic, right? So I wrote this thanks to Wikipedia. Wikipedia as my reference, but I did not cite Wikipedia. But to start, I use Wikipedia at least, and the pictures, we go and we took original photo, or we ask, because we want to avoid any issues later. Very descriptive. We submitted today. 3 days later, we received email. Paper is accepted. But you must revise. What does it mean? Editors like this paper. They want this paper to be in their collection. It's not ready yet. There are comments for us to revise. After revision, after 1 month, we submit. After a few days, publish. Later, you can see here. Later on, I will enlarge for you. Then this is the proof. Article information. When it was received, when it was revised, when it was published. Less than 2 months. Okay, so you want to graduate on time, you have to think a lot more, including writing conceptual paper. I know this is not the session about it. There are actually many ways to trim a cat. Sometimes students are stuck thinking there's only one way. There are many ways to do things. Okay, this is another journal that I edit as the editor-in-chief. When I was appointed as the editor in 2017, it was not in Scopus. 2018, we applied Scopus. It was included in Scopus Q4. Now it is Scopus Q2. Okay, Asian Journal of Business Research. If you are doing something on management, marketing, tourism, hospitality, human resource, then this is a journal you may want to look at. Rejection rate, more than 80%. Okay, bad news, good news as well. It depends on how you look at it. Rejection rate is high because we also receive a lot of papers which are good for nothing but reject. So it doesn't mean that you must provide something that is so novel. This is another experience I like to share with you. I guess many of you know Professor Ramaya Turasami. A few of us, we worked together for quite some time. But what I like to highlight is 2017. We started a new journal called JASEM. So Young Consumer was already a good journal when I was appointed as the editor. Now I'm telling you journal that we started from zero. And the one before, the journal that we took over when it was really poor. So all these are learning processes. 2017, we started a journal called JASEM. How we did it, sorry, no time to share with you. Some might say, or many might say, as a new journal, it's difficult to attract good papers. It's difficult to be cited. You are right, but you are wrong at the same time. Okay? The wrong part requires innovation. Right, because it makes sense. A new journal, not indexed, how can you attract papers? How can you get into Scopus? You are right. But again, it really depends on how you innovate during the process. 2020, 3 years later, it was indexed in Scopus. 2024, Scopus Q1 in management, which is very competitive. Q1 in management. Okay, so trust the process. Many of our citations, my friends and I, come from the editorials that we wrote. And these editorials are methods paper. And methods papers are usually applicable across social science. It doesn't matter whether it is a marketing paper, management paper, example, a paper about sample size, a paper about common method bias, a paper about methodological misconception, whatever. Of course, we did enough homework to make sure that it is a good paper for people to read and refer to. So these papers attract a lot of citations. I remember one of my friends, he published 2 or 3 papers during this time, 2017 to 2020. JASEM was not in Scopus at all. His paper was cited, but it was not captured by Elsevier, not in Scopus. His Scopus H index is 4 at that time. He wanted to apply for associate professor. That university, for some reason, looked at Scopus H index, not Google H index. 2020, when JASEM was included in Scopus, Elsevier Scopus team look at all the papers from 2017. They decided that the papers are good enough. All papers from 2017 are included in Scopus database. Not only 2020, yeah? All papers right from the first issue. My friend's Scopus Hatch Index leaped from 4 to 10. So again, when you build your profile, you have to think far. Sometimes we are so eager to get the paper published. Yes, eventually it is published. It is not read. It is not cited. And be careful with some journals, dubious journals, because if one day this journal is blacklisted, you want to remove them from your CV because it may spoil your reputation altogether. Okay. Okay, another journal that I work with the Ministry of Tourism with practitioners, because this is a journal we purposely make a point to work with practitioners to make a real impact on the society. I would not say this. This is the tourism minister in Sarawak. From 2018 to 2022, I write less nowadays because of my works with the ministry, with government, with some international bodies. But in the span of 4 to 5 years, I guest edited more than 20 special issues. My friends told me, asked me, why not spending all this time on your own work? I could have written a lot more, if not because if we arrange a special issue, normally we don't publish a paper in our own special issue. It will be seen as you are abusing your position. Okay, you're actually creating chances for others. But the good thing is we learn, we met friends, we are invited to conferences because they need special issue to support them. You see, so all these values, benefits that you enjoy in the process. As a result, I can come to Kuala Lumpur with flight accommodation all covered. I don't need any cent from my university to support me because of special issue. This is just one of the many benefits. But most importantly, we learn. And for example, these 3 special issues. People from China, from US, from African countries, from Australia. So many of them, I've not met them before these special issues. We know each other from Facebook, from LinkedIn. Then we talk to each other before COVID, email, after COVID, during COVID, Zoom. And we work together. We work together. And when we write a paper together, when it is published, the visibility becomes higher. It's perfectly fine if you write a paper as a single author. It is your work, it's perfectly fine. My experience tells me I prefer to work with others because the joy of working with others, sharing your work with others, and also when it is published, the visibility is higher. Now this paper is not only quote, quote, promoted in Malaysia, it's also promoted in Australia, in other countries. And more people will know your work because of their colleagues. Left. Okay, not doing well. Huh? Okay. Why publish? Skip this. You know all the reasons already, okay? How about this? These are the reasons I have been sharing with you for the last, I don't know, half an hour or 1 hour. KPI, promotion, securing grant, all these are necessary. All these are important. But I want you to consider these 5 reasons, as I said earlier, so that you have extra motivations to do more, to persist. Okay? Did you start early? If you are young, start today. If you are not young, start today as well. Okay? Basically, I show these papers because whatever reasons we have, why we cannot publish, all these reasons are already studied before. So there's nothing new. Okay, why people fail, why those who say they can't publish, they are sorry, let me put it this way. Those who publish, they are as busy as those who said they cannot publish. Why? Okay, read those papers. Okay, so there. So what publishing success, enabling environment. Now, I add another statement. If your working place provides enabling environments, make good use of it. But we also know in reality, sometimes our workplace, I know this is recorded, does not necessarily provide enabling environment. Let me give you one example. Okay, there's one particular place. All lecturers who do PhD are given Thursday, Friday afternoon off to do their research. Okay. However, because they know all these lecturers are free on Thursday and Friday, usually they will arrange meeting during that time. Example, okay. So I advocate, why not you learn to create the environment? Okay, it's not in this article, but there's another session. Okay, you need to create another environment to suit your writing style, your situation, so that your writing continues. Okay. Okay. Another advice: if you have a target journal, most likely editors of that journal wrote editorials before. So read the editorials, how to publish in their journals. Okay, so it doesn't matter which discipline. These are all journals from different disciplines. Read editorials of your target journal, apart from volunteering yourself as ad hoc reviewers. Okay, so young consumers, what I like to highlight is this one. Okay, I'm sorry, I might need a few more minutes. Most of us write research paper because we are trained to write research paper, because our thesis is like research paper. We are not really trained to write other types of manuscript. And that is actually a huge gap. Many journals accept different manuscript types, but all of us compete research papers. Compete might not be the right word, but anyway, journal, like I said, good journal cannot publish all the papers they receive. What about viewpoint? What about technical paper? What about conceptual paper, case study, literature review, journal review? We don't really have many workshops on this. Okay, now let me give you an example. These two papers is called conference note, conference report. One of them is published in Anatolia, Scopus Q1. Another journal, Journal of Convention and Event Tourism. Not sure what is the ranking now. After the conference, my friends and I wrote this report, and we submitted to journals which accept conference report. 1 to 2 months later, published. And 1 to 2,000 words. No theory, no method, report, but of course you must edit to really tell the story, how this conference make an impact on the society, on the topics they look into. Different manuscript type. Okay, this is the journal I mentioned just now. Received 23rd January, revised 23rd February, accepted 23rd February, and then published 3rd of March. Okay, so I received decision end of January. Okay, so this is conference report. What about case study? Emerald Publishing has been conducting workshop about case study. Case study doesn't really demand theory. It doesn't really demand rigorous methodology. And if you are a new student in year 1, instead of writing conceptual paper, by all means you can do that. Why not do a case study? Case study is more about context, more about story. Who are the actors concerned? What are the challenges? What are the ways forward? What are the insights? Data could be from newspaper, could be from anywhere. Okay, it doesn't demand theory, empirical data. It depends on your story. Okay, and what about viewpoint? If you have a friend in the industry, working in the ministry, working in a big company, he is happy to work with you, he provides data, you do the writing, and you publish the paper together. If you know a good book only available in Urdu language, for example, do a book review. Okay, there are many other manuscript types you or students can try to get it published in good journals. Okay, so we have to proceed. This is just an example, young consumer. This is about novelty. This is about theoretical positioning. This is about contribution, theoretical contribution. This is about method. Now, these are the few things editors will likely look at. Out of these 4 things, novelty, originality, theoretical positioning, your contribution, and your methods, these 3 things can be determined at your introduction. This is why sometimes, before you submit today, before you sleep, you receive email, your paper is rejected. You wonder this editor is professional enough because they don't need to read further. Method, why? Because if we don't trust your method, we don't trust your findings and discussion anymore, especially for social science. Especially for social science. It doesn't matter what software you use, how bombastic all the statistical results are, your finding, your discussion. Typical marketer, you can exaggerate things, even you know answers before doing research. Sometimes you already anticipate what the answers are. Okay, we look at your methods, serious bias, glaring mistakes are either major revision or we better reject. We don't want to waste time. Why waste time? You have to understand, when reviewers write comments, not only they write comments to you, in Emerald dashboard, the Emerald, there's also a column for reviewer to write something for the editor. This is not good. Why? Reviewer wrote this to me before. Next time, please don't send this sort of paper to us. It is a waste of our time. Too kind to authors, but we kena marah, kena bomb. Okay, remove that column. Anyway, so okay, I better. Okay, these are some final thoughts. Now, disclaimer: if you don't write, nothing will happen. Okay, to publish, you must write. If you write, then only you consider these points. Okay, if you don't write, then work on writing first. If you write, consider these points. Number 1, know and meet experts. Attend conferences purposefully. Don't just attend to present, to publish. Once your job is done, time for shopping. Nothing wrong, but you're wasting resources. Okay, nothing wrong. That's why many conferences like to do it in nice places. Meet people. I like to meet people sitting at the front rows. I like to meet people sitting at the back rows. Many of them, at that time, they were delegates. 2 years, 3 years, 2 years later, 5 years later, they become deans. They become heads of department. So you have a lot of invitations because of the way you communicate. You make friends with them. Meet, and I have a paper with them. Now, no shame to admit. If I were to write this paper myself, dream on, it may not go anywhere. You just have to admit because when you work certain thing on, it's very challenging, especially when you look at this topic. But because of these few guys I'm working with, the paper was published eventually after revision. And for the last 5 years, this paper is ranked number 1 in all marketing papers in the world in the last 5 years in terms of citation. Again, no shame to admit, not because of me. It's because we work together. Okay? This is the Australian guy I mentioned, David Waller. I wrote to him the first year, declined. Second year, accepted. Then now, good friend. Okay? Two things. Edit and proofread. He did it happily. We received it happily as well. The paper also published. Okay? Sorry, this is propose your value, okay, to work with others. Number 3, build your network and teams. Thanks to Emerald Publishing, 2018, I won this Emeralty Award. But, again, no shame to admit, this is actually not my paper. My friend's paper, he invited me to be a co-author. So we celebrate success together. Okay? So again, the value, the joy, the rewarding, as I mentioned earlier, in the publishing process. Number 4, invest in your students. Okay, to cut the story short, tourism management is top 1, top 2, top 3 journal in tourism and hospitality. This paper is based on my final year students' work. So thanks to them. Of course, I guided them, their questionnaire, but they collected the data. They came up with the report. The report was enough to grade them. The report was still rubbish to me. At least it's good enough for me to work on it. Because if you have to write every paper from zero, you need a lot of motivation. If a paper is 20% done, 30% done, 40% done, example, your MBA students, I told my friends, why not design your MBA assignment using case study guidelines? So whatever they did, good enough for grading, good enough for them to complete, also good enough for you to work on them to turn them into publication. If the students want to work with you continuously, do that. If not, they leave it to you to work on it, then why not? At least it is 30% done, 40% done. Okay? So some of them, they become your colleagues, they become your whatever, okay? Like Prof. Ramaya told me, his student now becomes the dean of his faculty. He needs to report to her. Okay, this is one thing that I can't elaborate too much. Talk to and learn from practitioners. I firmly believe in this. Partly why from 2019 onwards, not because of COVID-19, for some reason, 2019, I started to shift my focus more on industry. I attended industrial conference in Australia, in Taiwan, in a few places. I forced myself to do that. I remember when I attended this conference in Australia on digital marketing. Digital marketing is a concept, is a topic that we are somewhat familiar with. But when I listened to their speeches, when I conversed with them, I was lost because the language is different. It's different. We talk about theory, they talk about something else. I was almost embarrassed to be there. But fortunately, I decided to learn again. How can we bridge the gap? How can we mobilize research knowledge to practice, to community projects? How can we also channel community voice through our scholarly writing so that government would listen? They will take note. Or we even write newspaper to put pressure on agencies concerned. Again, I'm not just giving assumption. I say all this because I do all this. I'm doing all this at the moment. Some people like me, some people hate me as well for doing all this. Anyway, so this is a very good paper about collaborating with business practice for impact. This is a project that I did with Ministry of Health Malaysia. I was appointed as the lead consultant. For 2 years, we came up with this report. Then I asked for permission whether we could turn this report into a paper. You see many authors there, because all these authors, except me, they are officers from different states in Malaysia. From Selangor, from Penang, from Sarawak, from Sabah. Okay, so again, it's a learning process. How to make good use of knowledge from both academia, and industry. A bit of promotion. These are conferences where I will be involved. And if you sort of understood, some of the things which I said earlier, you might be able to tell this conference, if you join, a bit of promotion here, it will be different because there are a lot of norms we decide to move away. Because for me, we accept it, but it's actually not conducive. Example, how can we design conferences in such a way that delegates decide to stay throughout the conferences? Or else, this session, only 5 listeners, only 5 delegates. Why? Because these 5 people will present. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. Okay, we still do it because it's necessary for whatever reason, but the learning experience, anyway. So these are the conferences. We have some flexibility to change design, how to make it more relevant. For ICRTH, this is a conference where ministry, government, academic, practitioner, community will all join. How to make sure they talk? You come and see, lah. Okay. So with that, thank you so much. Again, my apology for managing my time poorly. I hope you find it useful. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
We have 3 minutes.
Oops.
So anyone would like to ask one, maybe this very question, short question. Anyone? Yes, please. Yeah. Introduce yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor, for your teaching. I have 3 questions, but I will skip the 2. You already answered one.
Okay.
My question is, what specific factors do you prioritize when deciding whether a manuscript fits the scope of a journal? Yeah.
Okay, very quickly, the most fundamental one, whether your paper fits the aims and scope of the journal. And you should know by reading the journal. This is number 1. Then number 2, usually we will talk about the relevance, the quality of the paper. And this relevance and quality are usually, at least for me, they are determined by the 4 things I mentioned just now. Number 1, novelty. It's about the originality of your work. Number 2, how do you position your paper theoretically so that we know what area of knowledge, what body of knowledge you are referring to. Number 3, if your position is clear, then it's easier to justify your contribution. Then number 4, we will just go straight to the middle part of your paper to look at your methods. Because if your methods are wrong, or if there are glaring mistakes, then we really don't trust your findings anymore. Make sure these are done correctly, or at least avoid rejection. Apart from that, good storytelling. So I hope that helps. Okay.
One question down. Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding AI on research. What's your perspective about that, especially for the future research?
Now, this is a topic. Even publishers all over the world are looking into this seriously, how to tackle these issues. On one hand, we need to accept that this is an advancement of technology. On the other hand, we also know that people can abuse it for their own agenda. My take is, if you are authors, use them, but make sure they don't replace your role as researchers. Your papers must have your voice. If you are caught, you will be in trouble. If you are not caught, you think you are lucky, your paper gets published, but don't forget, technology will continually be improved. 5 years later, 10 years later, someone who hates you will look at your paper, use more advanced algorithm, they ask you for data, they check, they investigate, you cannot produce, you will be in trouble. So use them, but they should not replace your role as researchers. That's all I can say. Okay, thank you.
One last question. This is your chance, yeah? Editor in chief here. Yes.
Thank you so much. I really want to ask, in a paper, how many authors are too many? How many authors are too few? Secondly, when you go to a conference, and after you submit a paper to a conference, published or will not be published? I really want to know about conference papers and publishing. What's the difference? Thank you.
Yeah, for the first question, I can answer because if a journal specifies maximum number of authors, they will likely have mentioned it in their journal policy. If they didn't, then it doesn't really matter. But some journals may ask you to clarify their contribution to this paper. So you must be able to justify author A, author B, author C, author D, what they did, how much they contributed to this particular paper. At least one author, right? How many you decide, but as a rule of thumb, normally 3 authors, 4 authors if you are looking at multiple authorship. But again, no formula about this. Okay. Number 2, now this is actually a huge question. Huh? It really depends on the conference organizers. I just share with you one perspective. Again, it's not comprehensive, but it's just one perspective. If you learn writing and publishing, you can submit your paper to a journal directly. You don't have to submit through a conference. Unless that conference is prestigious. It's a conference organized by MIS Quarterly editor, GEMS editors. You have these conferences in USA, whatever. Okay, that's different. Or else, if you learn writing, if you learn publishing, you can submit papers to journals directly. So, when you attend a conference, yes, you present a paper. Yes, there is publication opportunity, but you also spend a lot of efforts in learning, listening, asking questions, networking, talking to editors, talking to potential authors. That's why you stay throughout the conferences. If the conference provides publication opportunity, wonderful. If it doesn't, it does not deter you because you can submit your paper to a journal directly. So from time to time, we receive papers where the authors told us they only submit the papers to present. They don't want the papers to be published because they know where to publish their papers after the conference. They only want to present, get comments, talk to those who have similar interests using their paper during the conference. So that's one perspective. I hope that answers the question. All right, thank you.
All right, one last one. They can't stop us.
Sorry, I can't stop talking as well.
Question because it's been a random instances that has been happening not only in Malaysia, but eventually you submit a paper for a conference or vice versa, and you find out that one of the lecturers or board members took that paper and submitted somewhere, and you get to find out about it. I want to seek your advice. What you should advise we, the students, to do about it?
You want to quote my word? Now, I need to know a bit of context. This person is a student or lecturer?
The person who has the paper is
Okay.
a student, a PhD student, and the individual that submitted above before is the lecturer. So I want to really find out how you advise to go
The camera is in front of me. We talk about editor is always right. We talk about customer is always right. I will tell you reluctantly, supervisor is always right. Check with the supervisor what you should do next. Otherwise, I don't know. I need more context because this is a situation that I cannot provide an answer simply. Example, the paper, which is whatever you call it, hijack or whatever, is it part of your work? Only part of your work. And therefore, you compromise, let it be because you don't want to get yourself into any unnecessary trouble. And you know how to rewrite them because it's just a part of your work and turn it into another paper for publication. So again, there are multiple ways to do things. This is not a new incident. Yes, it happens. It happens. But it really depends on the situation. Do you want to report to ethical committee? If you are foreign students, you are under scholarship, will you be under, some sort of challenge to do that? So I hope you understand I cannot give you an answer. You have to look at the situation, talk to your supervisor, unless your supervisor is, anyway, and see what is the next appropriate course of action. As a researcher aspiring to excel all the time, this might not be the answer, but what you may consider is you can always come up with better papers. So even if someone steals my idea, let it be, because I can always innovate, because this learning process allows me to always think outside the box, come up with something better, something new. So that paper, let it go. 1 year later, 5 years later, when you become a lecturer, when you give a talk like this, you can always use this as an example to inspire others not to do it. Okay? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for attending this sharing session by Prof. Hiram. And thank you very much, Prof. Hiram, for not stopping for continuous talking. And so I'd like to invite to close the session for us. Maybe, yeah.
Okay, again, thank you, our moderator, Dr. Cordelia, and our distinguished speaker, Prof. Hiram, for his insight, his knowledge sharing for today. There's nothing to close, so you all are free to leave now. And bring the knowledge with you. Hopefully you write good papers and you graduate in time. And we would like to have photo opportunities. Where?
When will I? I will go abroad in November, so I will pass by.